Welcome back to Delicious and Nutritious, where we use the best quality ingredients to cook the tastiest food. Today, I'm really excited about this recipe because it's gonna be super easy and simple. It's actually gonna come off the back of the Jovial pasta box. You guys have heard me talk about some pasta in the past and how we can make pasta healthy for us. The problem with regular pasta is that it is made with wheat. Wheat has been one of the most abused plants in agriculture for a long period of time. So we want to try our absolute best to stay away from wheat and focus around finding wheat substitutes. So what has happened to wheat over the years? Number one, it can be called organic because it was actually one of the first not genetically modified organisms. It was actually bred and genetically basically manipulated through breeding in creating the most glutinous form of wheat, because the gluten in wheat is typically the aggressor in people's food intolerances. So what has happened is we have bred in most countries, unless it is going to be the ancient grains wheat that typically comes from Europe, has been bred to be more gluten full. So it's really full of gluten, and that means that's a congealing agent. So the wheat is not typically what our bodies know of what wheat is. And additionally, now we have genetically modified it. We are now spraying it with tons of herbicides and pesticides. It does not get treated fairly. It is not really the best congruent ingredient for our bodies. However, sometimes there are people that are congruent with it and it does work well with them, but typically speaking, if you do it, you absolutely must do wheat organic. And preferably it would come from Europe, it would be imported, and I believe it's called the ancient grains type of wheat, okay? There's a specific name for it. I will pin it in the comments below if I come about. So this pasta, which I absolutely love, there's a bunch of different pastas out there that are made from all different types of stuff, but this one here is gonna be called jovial. Jovial is gonna be 100% organic brown rice flour pasta. It's gonna be gluten-free, and the recipe, voila, is sitting on the back. So we're gonna make a slight modification to this if you want to. If not, you can eat it as is, but it is absolutely fantastic pasta. Number one, it really holds its shape. The one problem with a lot of the gluten-free pastas is they kind of start becoming mushy, or they just don't taste quite the same. But this particular brand is by far my favorite brand that I have run across, and I've been gluten-free for almost 10 years now. So I got some experience under my belt, and this one, absolutely fantastic. So without further ado, let's get right into the recipe and start breaking down the ingredients. As always, I'm just gonna have a little bit of sea salt. It doesn't say on the recipe that it requires it, but sometimes it's to taste. So that's gonna be a to taste. We're gonna need 1.5 pounds of cherry tomatoes. So cherry tomatoes, love them. These ones are gonna be wild ones. These are similar to the carrots that we did talk about that are now coming out in different colors. They are no longer just giving us the red ones. They all have slightly variation of tastes, but this is naturally probably what you're gonna see in the wild, so that's why I'm a big fan of these specific tomatoes. And then it requires, or calls for, 1 clove of garlic. I am a big fan of garlic. It is a great anti-parasitic. It's really good for the GI tract. So what I'm gonna do, I'm probably going with 3 to 4 cloves of garlic. If you're not a big fan of garlic, you may wanna stay away from them. And even further, if you guys think I'm even crazier, I like bigger chunked garlic. So it just really depends on what you really like. Are you trying to keep vampires away? Or are you trying to let them come into your life? Just kidding. So garlic, 1 clove is what it's calling for. I am gonna go for 4. Typically I'll go for between 3 and 4. And then it's gonna call for oregano, another great anti-parasitic. It's actually one of the highest antioxidant foods out there, oregano. Oregano oil is extremely strong. It's really purifying for the GI tract. And typically you actually have to dilute it because it's actually so strong. It is a great, great spice. And this one is calling for 1/4 teaspoon of the oregano. And then it's calling for 3 tablespoons of jovial olive oil. So, guys, you know how I feel about the oils. Typically speaking, I use olive oil, avocado oil, other oils like that, only for non-cooking purposes, because although they may have high smoke points, we're looking at the duration of how long the oil can last while being heated. And a lot of those denature relatively fast. They are relatively low cook oils, right? So maybe if you're heating something up real quick and you just throw a splash in it at the end, it can be good. but we want the high smoke point, the high denaturation point as well, meaning that it can stay at a high smoke point and it's gonna hold its composition and it's not gonna rancidify for a long period of time. So we are going with the organic coconut oil, refined if you want a less nuttier coconutty taste, but also you can use it if you want a little bit more coconut, but preferably it would be refined. It takes out some of the ingredients and it keeps the smoke point higher. It's a much better option for cooking. And then finally, an amazing, amazing superfood. This is great for detoxification. It's really a powerful superfood. It's gonna be broccoli. It's calling for a head. I'm going with 2 heads. You guys do wanna see it right here. This is gonna be organic. I love broccoli. Honestly, when I was in one of the functional nutrition seminars, they were talking about what was one of the best foods that you could eat an abundant amount of, and it was broccoli. It has amazing things that support so many processes in the body, and you want it to be organic because you wanna get all those micronutrients in the food, as we do talk about as why organic food is so super important. And the last ingredient, which is pretty important for people, is going to be cheese. So I do not have the packaging here, but this is actually gonna be Violife brand Parmesan cheese. It is non-dairy. It is a great substitute. I absolutely love this. This tastes amazing. When we do make dairy-free, yes, I said it, dairy-free mac and cheese, we are gonna use this specific cheese as a part of the recipe. It's fantastic. I love it. So this is gonna be grated over the top if to garnish, if that's what you desire, but if you don't want to, you can just overlook it and go from here. And then, like I said, sea salt. And there's 2 additions that I'm gonna recommend for you guys if you want to. Number 1 is going to be a carrot. So you can, I would prefer a food processed carrot. And since we're gonna be baking this dish, it's gonna be pretty easy to make, but carrots really give tomato sauce another level. So it's gonna be a little bit chunky with the carrot, but that is an option for you guys. And then number 2, this dish is vegan, but if you are not a vegan or you want to add something into it, whatever that be, you can do non-meat alternatives. But I really like this Belinsky's mild Italian with bell peppers, or they have a spicy Italian version. This is chicken sausage. It's organic, made with pasture-raised chickens. It's got really clean ingredients and it tastes great. What I do, and they're already pre-cooked, is I just heat one up in a frying pan with a little bit of coconut oil. I chop it in half, and then I chop it like this so it's diced up. We're not gonna put it in there today, but I wanted to give you guys that option if you want the mild one here. If you want a spicier one, the spicy version is absolutely delicious as well. So first and foremost, we need to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. Not only that, I am going to recommend that you guys start turning on your water. You want it to boil. So the pasta, the cook time is right up top. This is a unique pasta because typically when you cook pasta, you turn it on and then you turn it down, you let it boil, and then you bring it down to a simmer and then you cook the pasta. This one actually is a rolling boil the entire time for 12 minutes. So I'm gonna start heating the water. I'm gonna put the bake time on for 400 degrees to make sure that's all prepped and ready for when we prep this. It's a relatively fast prep process. So starting off, we need to do a couple things. So we're gonna start preparing the tomatoes. We're gonna need 1.5 pounds, 16 ounces a pound. I have 2 10-ounce. That's gonna be good enough. Then we need the 1 clove of garlic. Like I said, I am going for 3 or 4, which I will teach you guys how to, or at least I do it. If you guys have better ways of chopping up garlic, please feel free to pin them in the comments below. So there is 1, 2, 3, and 4 right there. And then we have the oregano, the oil, and the salt. So this one does not say to cut up the tomatoes, but what I'm gonna recommend is that you cut them in half. That's how I like it. If you want them as whole tomatoes, you can do so. I prefer them in halves. It stretches the tomatoes out and it makes it more of a saucy type dish as opposed to just having chunky tomatoes in there. Both are gonna be delicious. You have to choose which one you like best. All right, so here we go. Guys, when I open this, you guys see that there's plastic film on the top. Do remember, if you guys see me, I recycle quite frequently. It's gonna be recycled with plastic bags, so all you have to do is have a plastic bag. Put clean plastic in there, and then what you do is you bring them to a Target. You can look, just Google, where can I recycle plastic bags, and you'll find it. Okay, so we have our tomatoes, and we're just gonna check out to see if they're all good. I did see one bad one in there. One way to check to see if the tomatoes are bad, you just look at the top right there, and if you see a little bit of I guess you would call that mold forming, that's gonna indicate that it's bad. This one is probably not so great as well. And since one of those was bad, I'm just gonna go ahead and rinse those just to make sure that we don't cross over. And now we're gonna go for the garlic. How I do the garlic is I take the knife and I cut off the bottom little hard part of the garlic, which is gonna be what connects it to the bulb on both of them. And then when I do that is I pull down and peel, and then usually that allows me to just grab this and I'll kind of maneuver it just a little bit with my hands and I'll be able to pop it out real quick. So I grab that. This one is still connected right there. If you don't go all the way through, you can do that. And then I just pull it around. I see people that use the old take your knife into the garlic like this, push down, crack it a little bit, and then that opens it up. But it really just, for me, is all I have to do is get a little bit of the crack between the covering, and then we are on to go right there. Sometimes it does get a little finicky, but pretty easy. Like I said, you have to choose. Do you want the vampires to stay away for eternity? Or are you trying to stay a little bit on the daring side and allow the vampires to come into your life a little bit more? And in the recipe, it says oil. In totality, it calls for 3 tablespoons. I'm not gonna measure this one specifically. If you're really a measurer, you can. I'm just gonna take a spoonful of the coconut oil, and we are gonna need a baking sheet. I do not use regular baking sheets. I'm not a big fan. If you have a stainless steel one, that's okay, right? But if we think about it, remember the non-stick thing. If you can get a non-stick one, I haven't really looked actually into a non-stick baking sheet, but I prefer glass. It's so much easier. It may stick a little bit, which we can solve with some of the oil by just rubbing it around right here like this, but it makes such a healthier dish because we don't have to worry about the other issues as far as the non-stick chemicals that are gonna be leaching into our food from heating up that oven, putting the pan in there, and then that cooking the food on it is going to definitely leach into the food, which is not what we want. We want to keep our food as pure and close to as nature intended as possible. All right, and now we are going to chop this up, garlic. Like I said, I prefer bigger chunks of garlic. This is just what I prefer. You can do however you want. And I have a little bit of coconut oil left from putting the oil on the pan. Not too big of a deal. And then we have there, and then the last one we have right here is going to be right there. All right, perfect. That is going to go right into our pan here in a second. And then we are going to chop the tomatoes. What I prefer is at least in half. You can even quarter them if you do prefer that. Totally up to you with how you want to serve it. And I love the different colors of these. They look great. I'm a big fan of colors. Remember, I don't think I've talked about this before, but maybe I have, and I don't believe I have, that each of the colors, when they say, if you've ever heard this, eat the rainbow, every different color that we have in our food has different health benefits. So if you look right here, we have orange, red, slightly green, and then we have more of a whitish color. Each of those is a different phytonutrient, is what they're called. The phytonutrients are going to make the food a specific color, for one. For two, they're gonna have different health properties. So phytonutrients are super important. That's why eating the rainbow on a daily basis is very important, to make sure you are covering your broad spectrum of phytonutrients to make sure that you stay as healthy as possible. And there we have it. We have all of our tomatoes and garlic chopped up. We're gonna go ahead and put that right in here, just like that. The oil's in there, it's gonna melt, it's gonna start flavoring everything together. We need 2 more things for this part. We're gonna need ourselves some organic oregano, going right in, 1/4 of a teaspoon. I go with the heaping one. I just like a little bit more flavor in my food. Totally up to you what you like, but remember, oregano is a very strong flavor. And then it says salt as well, so I have my pink Himalayan sea salt that we're gonna go with today, and I'm just gonna put a couple grinds over the top. I would say maybe if you're going with like something like the gray salt that's already ground up, approximately a pinch right now. Remember, you can always add more salt at the end, but you can't take it away. So that's what you really want to be mindful when making this dish. It's always easy to just grind a couple things of salt into it at the end, as opposed to adding too much now and being like, whoa, okay, the dish is here. If you guys were to use the carrot, as I talked about, you want to food process it, you would do it now, you would add it in right now. But if you are not, and we're just following along with what we have right now, we do want to stir this up. Just make sure that everything is together, even though the coconut oil is not melted yet, but we wanna make sure that's there. Stirring that up, getting the oregano all the way around with all of the tomatoes, and the garlic is in there. I'm excited about this. I'm already hungry just making this right now. I'm already hungry starting before this video, and there we have it. This is going into the oven for 10 minutes at 400 degrees. And now we're getting on to the next step, which is gonna be basically preparing the broccoli, getting it ready. Once that comes out, we're gonna put the broccoli on there, bake it for 10 more minutes. As soon as we put the broccoli in the pan, put it back in, what we're gonna do is then put the penne into the pasta water that's boiling right now. It is already boiling for me as that has heated up. So I turned it down just a little bit, and that's gonna go right in there. 12 minutes, this is gonna take 10 minutes to finish up, and then we're gonna toss it all together, and it's gonna be perfectly timed. Okay, now onto our broccoli. So if you guys aren't familiar with broccoli, or you're new to cutting it and making it, this part of the stem is really not edible. There's a certain point where this becomes extremely chewy, and it's really challenging. So it's approximately right there. You can feel it. If you've ever cooked broccoli or cut it improperly, you can even feel the stem. It's so challengingly hard. And when I'm making broccoli, I just circle this thing around. This one's already broken off, and I'm just cutting the broccoli like this. And this is how I make my broccoli. And then you can always take this a step further, and you can go ahead and cut the broccoli down from here. But I am going to do it here. And for me, when I'm making food, it's always more vegetables equals better. Can never have too many vegetables. Obviously, you don't want it to overpower and have completely taste like vegetables, but at all times, if I have the ability to add more vegetables, like we'll make a minestrone soup on here at some point, and they require such a small amount of vegetables. I like double or triple the amount of vegetables because that's really what I'm after. I want this to taste really good, and I want it to be really functionally healthy for me as well. So the more vegetables, the better. So there is going to be around number one. If you have really big pieces and you want to cut them in half and break them down, like this is a pretty big piece, I want to make sure that it cooks evenly as well. You can always just cut them in half and make sure that they're all approximately the same size right there. If you guys want to eat the leaves, you can totally eat it. Not a big deal. It will go right in there. If you don't, you don't have to. There's nothing super crazy about the health benefits of this. I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it in there. Okay, so we have everything right there. Now we're gonna go through and make sure that all of the broccoli, number one, doesn't have any hard pieces on it. Number two, it's all approximately similar sizes so that it cooks evenly throughout. This one is a little bit big. Looks like it has a little bit of a hard spot on it, and that's going off. There we go. Broccoli, stems, that is ready to go. Now we're pretty much just gonna wait for the food to come out of the oven. Then we're throwing this in there, putting the pasta on, and then we're mixing it together, and we're already done. Okay, the oven timer has gone off, and we have this coming out right now. We're gonna start adding in exactly what we need to. Also, I wanna put a quick mention, when you're boiling the water, I typically put a little bit of a dollop, half a spoonful or so, of the coconut oil, and then I put a little grind of sea salt in there as well. It seems like it helps the pasta cook a little bit better, in my opinion. You can try it out for yourself. So first things first, we are going to want to start making the jovial pasta. We're gonna need a little bit of time for it to cool off. So as all you do, you have the boiling water. You're just gonna pop it open, place it right in there. And one of the keys for this pasta is stirring it quite frequently. And then it says, bring 3 quarts of water to a rolling boil, add salt as desired, cook pasta on high heat, stirring frequently, test for doneness, and drain. 12 minutes, you're gonna wanna test it. Please blow on the pasta before you try it. It is gonna be very hot coming out of the boiling water. And I suggest, if you're gonna cover it, only really like half cover it, because it is a rolling boil, so it can overflow quite frequently. Okay, so here it is what we're at right now. Looks really tasty. We are getting there. It smells fragrant. I already smell the garlic coming through. The tomatoes are starting to kind of cook down, releasing a little bit. You want some of that liquid in there because it's gonna go on pasta, guys, remember. So we're gonna take, this is why I love these cutting boards as well, because they're so maneuverable. And we're gonna toss the broccoli in there. This is gonna be 2 heads of broccoli. If it's too much broccoli and it's overpowering for you, just use 1 head. Like I said, I go more vegetables the better is always my motto. So we're gonna put a little bit more coconut oil just to cover everything in there. And then we're gonna stir this up gently, being careful. This is hot. We don't really want to burn ourselves, but we do want to really try to mix the tomatoes in with the broccoli. We want to try to at least get some liquid on all of everything, especially the new things, which is going to be the broccoli. Okay, just about done here with the stirring. I think we've pretty much got at least a little bit of liquid on everything. We've coated it with a little bit of oil as well. The tomatoes and the garlic are coming along great. We're now ready to put it back in the oven for 10 more minutes at 400 degrees. The pasta is cooking. We are almost done with this dish. When timed properly, everything just flows super easily and naturally. And here we go for the grand finale. We need the pasta, which we have drained. We have it right here in the sink. Pasta is going to be coming out, and we want to dump that into a bowl, large mixing bowl, to make sure that we can accommodate everything. And step number 2, we need to retrieve the oven ingredients. Voila, there we go. Looks great. So it said 10 minutes to cook it. How I judge it is when I am cooking, especially when I have a little bit longer stems on my broccoli, what I do is I take a piece of broccoli out with a little bit larger of a stem. I will cut the stem off and I will taste the stem to see how done that piece is. And so I had to put this in for approximately 8 minutes longer than it did say with that extra 10 minutes for the broccoli. So I'm going to go ahead and add this in. Voila, right over the pasta. Oh, I'm so excited about this. And there we have it right here. We have the pasta. Now you're just gonna stir this up. The sauce is gonna start covering the noodles. And the grand finale, man, this is delicious, is going to be to try it. Okay, so we're just gonna scoop a little bit of this out. Super tasty, super simple, easy to do from home in a short period of time to get it there. Okay, so I am a fan of trying it first. I'm gonna put a little bit of a sprinkle of sea salt on it for me. That's really gonna hit it home for me. And then we are going to try it out. I wanna get a piece with the tomato, and then I want one of those big chunks of garlic. That is what I'm a big fan of right there. Super tasty. The broccoli, a little bit on the softer side. You're gonna have 2 options. Number 1, you can cut the broccoli into much smaller pieces, or number 2, you can steam it a little bit before you go on to step number 2. But that's gonna be it. Super simple, super easy, great pasta recipe. I suggest tasting it. If you want a little bit more salt, you can do so. And if you don't wanna cut up the tomatoes and you'd rather have them more as like the whole chunky tomatoes, you can do that as well. It's really maneuverable to be where you're at. Try it as it is on the box, try with the whole tomatoes, and then go from there. So thank you guys for tuning in to Delicious and Nutritious. We have amazing recipes coming up. I think the next recipe is going to be tasty, delicious, and healthy Reese's Peanut Butter Cup replicas in a healthier version, which I'm extremely excited about. And then don't forget, we have the Violife Parmesan that we can shred right over the top. Shreds just like cheese, will melt just like cheese, just like that. And there you have an extremely delicious and nutritious meal. So thank you for taking your time out of the day today to cook this meal with me. I'm super appreciative of all of you guys. I'm excited to cook more delicious and nutritious meals so we can keep changing the world one bite at a time. Have a great day.